turn all the way to East Africa. Now, Kenyan authorities are in the midst of a security crackdown targeting terrorists and their alleged supporters. This has Somalis in Kenya feeling unwelcome and many have decided to go home. VOA's Gabe Joselow now reports from Mogadishu. Well, Gabe, let me come to you. We have a nice package. You traveled to Somalia and you've done quite a bit there. But let me first ask you, there has been a lot of protest in Nairobi from the Somali community, and now things are even going to the social media. First, give us a sense of where things are since this operation started.
Well, since it began, the Kenyan authorities have deported almost 300 people, mostly Somali Kenyans, back to Somalia. And they've screened over 2,000 people at screening centers, mostly in Nairobi. There's a major screening center there. So the sweeps, you know, they've netted a lot of people who say they're completely innocent. In an effort to track down terror suspects, illegal immigrants, and anybody else who's committing a crime. So there's actually, what's happened is this has been seen as targeting the Somali community, which I should clarify doesn't necessarily mean people who are Somali citizens, but people of an ethnic Somali background. And there are plenty of people like that, a huge population here in Kenya. So a lot of the anger about these operations are coming from that community. Which feels like they've been unfairly targeted, you know, even though that they are Kenyan citizens, they're being treated as terrorists and treated as, you know, illegals.
Does the Kenyan government seem to have any better option, given that most of those who've been involved in these terrorist attacks are actually of Somali origin?
It's true. A lot of the attackers that they're looking for would be parts of Al-Shabaab, which are the militant group that's based in Somalia. But what people have been saying, a lot of activists and a lot of sort of security experts say that what the government really needs is just better intelligence. Rather than trying to round up everybody and treating everybody like a suspect, it would be better to conduct more targeted operations. Even a lot of the Somalis that I've spoken to in Nairobi itself say they don't have any problem with this operation if it's done correctly. I mean, everybody is concerned about the security situation here, but their complaint is that the police, instead of actually looking for terror suspects or doing their job responsibly, are just soliciting for bribes, they're harassing members of the community, and they're just not doing their job in a correct way. So I think that's the approach that people would like to see the government take, is just to take this a bit more seriously.
But also we know that there have been like two operations here. There is one that is meant to return immigrants or refugees who are outside of refugee camps to the camps, and also search out for those who are suspected to be potential terrorist attackers.
Yes, there's a couple different aspects to this operation, and that was the first move that the government made, was to order all refugees who are living outside of the designated camps to return to those camps. But it's a controversial move. In fact, a court in Kenya ruled that such an order was unconstitutional last year. So the government sort of dismissed that court ruling and went ahead with the operation. It's important to note that a lot of refugees have permission to move beyond the camps. They have passes so that they can work or go to school or do other things, you know, in Nairobi or other cities across the country. So that's why you're seeing a lot of resistance to that order as well.
And, you know, we're going to run your piece shortly, but when people hear that Somalis in Kenya are going back to their country, are we really talking about large numbers of Somalis returning, or just a few who may just feel like they're fed up?
It's hard to tell the exact numbers. Like I said, the number of people deported which is ordered to leave, is over 200. But the number who have decided to return voluntarily, which is what my piece focuses on, is hard to tell. What I can tell you, though, is that when I went on this recent trip to Mogadishu, the airport in Nairobi was just so crowded with Somalis who were trying to return to Mogadishu with everything they owned. And people at the airport and other Somalis I spoke to said it's been like that basically since these operations began. So anecdotally, I can tell you that there seems to be a lot of interest and a lot of movement back to Somalia.
Now, for those that you met in Somalia who have returned, as they saying, conditions are now way better than they left them, that they're now comfortable?
Well, I'll tell you that Mogadishu is still not a safe city. There's been a rise in insecurity there lately, with more attacks targeting mostly government officials. But Somalis feel like, the ones who I spoke to feel like they would rather face those conditions than continued abuse as they see it in Nairobi. For a lot of them, there was really no looking back.
Well, thanks a lot, Gabe. Well,
thank you.
That's Gabe Joselow, and now just recently returned from Somalia, where actually Somalis from Kenya have decided to voluntarily return to their mother country, Somalia, and Gabe has this report that he sent from there.
Fed up with being targets of raids and security sweeps in Kenya, Somali citizens are returning to Mogadishu. Many built their lives, their businesses, and raised their families in Kenya. Now they are packing up everything they can carry, ready for a fresh start. While Kenya has deported some as illegal immigrants, countless others have decided to make the trip voluntarily. Ifra Osman has just returned with her daughter and baby son after 6 years in Nairobi. She says she had had enough of what she described as constant police harassment.
I took a decision after they knocked on my door at 1 o'clock in the morning. They knocked the door. They woke my baby up. So at that time, I made the decision to leave.
Kenyan police have been seeking out illegal immigrants as part of anti-terror operations known as Operation Usalama Watch. Much of the focus has been on ethnic Somali areas like Nairobi's Eastleigh neighborhood. Car bombings and other attacks blamed on the Somali militant group Al-Shabaab have prompted the operations, but Somali political leaders say the sweeps are unfairly targeting one community. Somali Prime Minister Abdiweli Sheikh Ahmed Mohammed, concerned for Somali citizens, says the sweeps are only making the security situation worse.
Affecting innocent people will only help Al-Shabaab because that will really psychologically traumatize people, and that should be stopped. I think we need to have targeted operations, so we are focusing on those terrorist groups.
While still racked with insecurity, Mogadishu is not the same city that many Somalis left behind years ago. Businesses have started to return since Al-Shabaab lost control of its last Mogadishu strongholds in 2011, and Kenyan Somalis are joining others from the vast diaspora who have decided to come home. Adnan Mohammed Abdallah went to Kenya as a refugee in 2006 to escape fighting in Somalia. After he'd been detained numerous times and had to pay ever-increasing bribes, his friends bought him a plane ticket to Mogadishu, but he had to leave his family behind.
I'll stay here in my country now, but I am asking the international community to help me get my kids here. Kenya is not fighting against terrorism. They are fighting against Islam.
Kenyan police have denied reports of harassment or ethnic targeting and say security operations will continue. But as immigrants feel increasingly unwelcome, more may decide to give Somalia a second chance. Gabe Joselow, VOA News, Mogadishu.